put show notes out on our website over at WPwatercooler.com/WPblab. So feel free to go take a look at that. I want to tell you something real fast here, just preemptively. I just want to jump in here and let you know that this show's not just a podcast if you're listening to it as a podcast. It's not just a video if you're just listening to it as video. It's both of them, and you can subscribe to us if you go to our website at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe. That's where you can learn how to subscribe to this content. So today's topic, we're going to be discussing UX is more than just a trendy design movement. It's marketing. I didn't know it was marketing, so I'm going to learn something today. But I don't know a whole lot about marketing anyhow, and I'm really good at faking it. So yeah, Bridget always does that. She goes, What do you mean you don't know about marketing? So I think a lot of folks feel that they either do or don't know much about marketing, and you have a lot of people that are designers or developers that just... And that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm really excited about this episode. So I know it's a bit of a different format, but I just want to let you know that this is going to be a cool show. So Bridget, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey, y'all. I'm a self-taught marketer, and I use my intuition, which is normally right. So...
Look at her.
Why is it right? Because what are you paying attention to?
Because I pay attention to human behavior. I mean, I started saying it, and then I was like, wow, Bridget. No, my client sent me this video, and he was asking his son, what are the H words? Oh, I found hat. And it said Hawaii. Hat, Hawaii, hair, head. And the dad said, those are really good H words. And the kid said, yep. I couldn't stop laughing because we're all taught humility, but this 4-year-old is on it. Well, the thing is that I have a background in psychology, and I was a teacher by degree. So I'm a marketer by instinct. That used to be my tagline. So what I do is I'm in there. I'm doing the boots on the ground, and I test things and I see what works. And so the intuition is what kind of forms my strategy, because a lot of people have been coming to me lately saying, can you do keyword research? And I send them elsewhere. I'm not a technical SEO person. I write from intuition, which is normally right. And as that little kid said, yep.
So where do people find you, Bridget?
They can find me at bridgetwillard.com. I'm super excited. My site's being redesigned again. I'm like one of those hair models. I was a hair model when I was a kid. And if you're willing for somebody to experiment, you can get a new design.
That's awesome. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog. I do this show as well as another show called WPwatercooler, which is also the name of the network. And today we're going to be talking, we're literally going to be doing a tour tip of the week that is the entire episode. So it's going to be kind of fun. We get a little bit of a crossover episode. It's only been 100 and whatever episodes, but yeah, it'll be super fun. Before we introduce our guest, I do want to introduce our sponsor, and I want to let you know you can go over to ServerPress, makers of desktop server. They make local WordPress development easy. If you haven't built a website locally, or you are scared to go and build a website and not know how to do it with a web host, you may want to download ServerPress. You can actually download it and install it and use it for free for 3 websites. And then after that, you've built the website, looks super pretty and everything's working good. Now you can go and get web hosting and pay for them. And then you could use their other tool that they have, which is called WP Site Sync, to take that content and send it up to the website, and everything's done. And it's really awesome. So you can go learn more about that over at serverpress.com. So, Michelle, tell us a little about yourself.
Hello. So I'm kind of the opposite of Bridget. I am deliberately and classically trained marketing professional, although my background is also in psychology. And I've often said that the best marketers
I'm in trouble.
come from psychology, because we're naturally and intuitively paying attention to human behavior. And ultimately, that's what marketing is trying to figure out how to get the right message in front of the right audience. So I've been doing marketing for a long time. I'm really am. I'm one of the weird people. I got my first degree in advertising and psychology. I went straight into marketing, and then I got another degree in design research. I got a master's in design research and focused in market research as well, innovative studies. And then I got an MBA specializing in strategic market development. So over the years, I've educated myself formally in marketing, and also by way of fire. I've kind of referred to myself as like the MacGyver of marketing.
Nice.
I never wanted to do it the way that all of my when I graduated, all my cohorts like went into these agencies and they sat in their cubicles and they entered into whatever silo that they're going to be an email marketer, they're going to be an SEO marketer. And I was like, I want to be an I want to be a CMO. So I need to know how to do all of it. And so I worked, my first job was for a medical clinic, and they did physical therapy and workers' comp and family medicine. So they had all these different moving parts, and I worked for $10 an hour. So I could be their marketing department and come in and build a marketing department. And everyone was making way more money than me at these much larger companies. But the experiences that I got by being able to take the whole soup to nuts all by myself was extraordinary to me. And that was worth more than how much I was making. And I just kind of continued down that path. And now, 15 years later, I'm an expert in coming into companies that have not had marketing before and building a marketing department, because I understand everything from market research and branding and positioning through designing ads, designing content, to knowing how to measure and analyze the data and use that to strategically inform what it is you're putting out and making sure it's working. So yeah, I've definitely been doing this for a while and I love it. And I got really lucky when I was in my undergraduate. I changed my major 5 different times to all these different things. And the first time I took a marketing class, I was like, found it. We're here. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I am now.
I love
Awesome.
it. You're so good. And it's funny because we say that marketers are better if they come from psychology, but advertising started with Dr. Watson, a psychologist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
selling, but if you understand what motivates people and why people do what they do and what's really driving why they're interested or not interested, then you know how to form messaging and branding and everything and put it in front of them where they want it. And to your point earlier, Jason, when you were saying you're not a marketer, in my career, what I found is that marketing tends to be kind of this catch-all place where people go into sales or customer support or design or development, and they trickle into marketing because they're people persons, right? They know how to get people. And the more companies I work with and more people I consult with, what I realize is there are a lot of people that are doing marketing every single day, but they don't know that's what they're doing. They don't call it that. They use a different language, but you're doing marketing. And even market research, and it's more prevalent than people realize how much we're actually using these concepts.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm marketing by necessity. So in order to make this whole thing work, I leverage everything that I can on Bridget, and then all the things that Bridget doesn't want to do, I have to do them by necessity. So I'm like, okay, I got to get this figured out. How do I build a thing? How do I make a thing? How do I make it look right? How do I make it so when people click on it, it does something? And so yeah, by necessity. When I say I'm not a marketer, I'm just not a marketer. Like that's not on my yeah. I'm an IT guy.
That's okay. But you know what? The other thing is that I always find really funny that people forget about, like, the 4 pillars of marketing are products, promotions, positioning, and price. And so if you're a developer and you're building a product, like that's 25% of what marketing is the product, right? And it's even funny for me professionally because I've been, director of marketing, like senior marketing positions. And whenever I go and look at like a product role, they're like, oh, you don't know product. You've never done product. It's like, what? You know what product is? Because if you did, then you'll know that it's actually very relevant to marketing. So
Yeah, it's like when you write something on your resume and you write that you know how to use Microsoft Word, and then they go, he knows Microsoft Word, and then they try to hire you as somebody who uses Microsoft Word. I'm like, Microsoft Word is like a tool in this toolbox, and is literally the smallest tool in the toolbox, and that's it, So yeah.
That's so funny, Jason. I'll never forget being at Robert Staff's recruiting
Oh yeah.
for back when I was doing accounts receivable and collections. And they were like, you said you had advanced Excel skills because I had taken these classes. The company bought a package of classes and we all went to these dumb classes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I go, well, yeah, I took this class. And he goes, but can you do a pivot table? I go, do I have to do it right now?
Heck yeah. And I'll VLOOKUP while I'm doing it.
I mean, I don't know. We don't use pivot tables. We have a proprietary accounting system made in Fox Pro or whatever. And he goes, but if you can't do it right now, you're not advanced. I go, fine, put it on intermediate. So like with these skills, we're always trying to say that we have them, and we do a lot of on-the-job training, and that's why I think that Michelle is such a great guest for this topic, because I don't have UX certifications. I just know if your website sucks and I can't figure out where to find something, I'm out. So can you define UX just to start with?
So when I did my master's in design research, we literally had a whole semester of theory where that is what we argued about, what the definitions of these types of things are. What is design research? What is user experience design? What is user experience research? And there's so many different school of thoughts to it. But ultimately what it is, and it really builds on what you guys talked about last week on empathy, understanding who your customer is, what their goals are, not what your goal is, but what their goal is, and designing to allow them to meet that goal. And so if their goal is to buy your product, then you want to design a product transaction process that allows them to do that easily without having for them to have to go outside of their natural intuitive way of wanting to do something, which is why it's so fundamentally linked with research. And people think that they can do UX without doing research, then you're designing in a bubble, and you don't know if it's actually going to be what they want, what your user wants, or what we ourselves as a business owner, as a marketer, as a designer thinks that they should want because of how we think about things. So really the most simplified definition I can think of is understanding a user and building and designing for them to be able to meet their goals. It's definitely not a textbook definition. That's my experience of what the most simplified definition is. So.
And UX is both same and different between physical objects versus the website versus a mobile app versus there are either buttons or inputs or any of those kind of pieces, but they are a bit different. So how do you show that to someone who has no idea, what you're building when you're trying to get through to end result?
So I show them by storytelling and by just making really simple metaphors and analogies so people to understand things. So back in the 80s, before UX was a thing, it was called product design. And that was it. You had to understand what the product was. And so it's come with all these different names. And that's why UX has been some trendy thing that all of a sudden all these executives are like, oh, we need UX teams. But they don't know what department to put them under. Do they put them with development? Do they put them with marketing and sales? Do they put them with design? They don't have the infrastructure because they don't intrinsically understand what the goal of a UX department or UX staffer is. And it's changing. Finally, people in the last, probably 3 years, especially, people are finally starting to understand how to think about it. But it's just through, these types of conversations and making people realize that it's actually very, very simple. And this whole UX UI craze is just a repackaging of things that we've been doing for as long as products have existed. You know, one of my professors, he used to build toys for Mattel. And so they would, you know, mock it up and kind of put something together and then let the kids come in and play with it and see what broke, what they liked, what they played with, what they didn't play with, and then go back in and fix the product. That was UX. That was design. That was design thinking before any of those buzzwords called it that. And so I think the biggest key here is to really just simplify it and demystify it. That it isn't some new trendy craze in digital design, but it's just applying that same physical product design into the digital realm where we're understanding, you know, because someone's not going to handle your website, right? They're going to click buttons, they're going to mouse over things, they're going to scroll, they're going to click here, they're going to click there. How far are they willing to scroll before they click? How many clicks do they have in them before they say, you know, FTS and move on with their life? And that's, again, where the research comes from that informs what that UX should look like.
Yeah, I mean, industrial design is a good teacher, and they have a whole that I highly recommend. Self-taught, watching Abstract: The Art of Design on Netflix. It has 2 seasons. It talks about all these different industries. But I'm telling you, there's many a morning when I use my coffee mate. Actually, like I actually bought the coffee mate little container, and then I would buy the generic, because the coffee mate creamer, not the powder, it's the only one with a snap back. You know how it goes like this, snaps back, because that's the most annoying thing is when you're pouring something and the lid keeps flicking like this, and then it's flicking all over the place and it's stopping and all this stuff. And I like, in my brain, I think, I wonder who that guy is, and I wonder what his Thanksgivings are like. Like, do they go, "Hey, Bob, what have you done lately?" "Well, I invented this snapback." And they're like, "That's all you did?" And then I think about the millions of people like me who just are in love with it. I would love to shake that guy's hand. And yes, I still believe in the handshake. There's a whole episode on the Will Kane show yesterday on espnradio.com. But like, that's what I'm saying. Is like that there are things that people do that you wonder, why hasn't this always been a thing? And like the genius of it, you know? So when we're touching stuff, it maybe feels more obvious. But Michelle, how can we bring that to website design? How can we test that?
So it ultimately all still comes back from experience. You telling a story about your experience making coffee and whether or not the lid facing a certain way, how that helps you and improves your experience is something tangible that we can all immediately be like, oh, okay, I get that. And now you say, okay, now pretend that lid is your call to action button. Where is it? Is it jamming up? Is it in their way? Are they able to press it when they're ready to press it? Do they have to go find it? Do they know there is a call to action button? Are you informing them and designing an experience for them where they consume one step after the next? Or are you just being like, here's all of our stuff and there's a bunch of pages and here's some navigation and we want you to do these 3 specific things, but good luck figuring that out? Or is it, hello, welcome to my website. Here's your creamer and here's your cap, and see how it opens up, and oh, how lovely, now you have creamed coffee, buy here now, right? Like, it's just the way you think about it. And so that's why, Jason, to your point, the best way to get people thinking about UX is getting them to understand that every time we have an experience with the product in the physical space, that same type of thinking needs to be applied to the digital space. Now, especially when we're all locked to the internet as basically our only form of engagement, you know, there's so many choices. And so how are you going to stand out over somebody else? It's because of your experience. The experience that you're offering within your website is going to, you know, be a positive one. It's going to help your user reach their goal, and hopefully your goal and their goal is aligned, and then people make money and they're successful. And that that's kind of the point of it all, right?
I mean, When it comes to experience, though, that's anecdotal. Is that less important than like Hotjar mapping?
It's not anecdotal at all. It's the critical piece of it that often gets overlooked. And Hotjar mapping is a really great tool because it allows you to kind of take a bird's eye view of the experience of what they're having. You can see the heat maps. And, if we had 100 people on our website, the majority of them, hang out on this part of the website. So we need to make sure our most critical information and call to actions are there. And no one's over on this side of the website. How can we make it more valuable? Or do we just need to trim it? Is it that important at all? But what I really like for Hotjar, and it's time consuming, is whenever you actually sit and watch the live recordings, because you can see
Oh yeah.
how, are they
So frustrating.
It's so frustrating, but it's really informative. And if you want to take that even a further step, get 5 people on a call like that, on a Zoom call or a video call or whatever, and record it and just say, go to the website and give them little prompts, navigate to this product, and then don't say anything else. Don't help them, and see how they navigate to that product. Ask them, were you able to find it quickly? What did you like about that? Did you not like that? Okay, now navigate to last week's blog and just kind of watch them. And then you get to see it for yourself and tell them directly what they're doing. Because when you're watching a Hotjar recording, they're doing whatever they were doing anyway. So it leaves so much space for assuming of what they're trying to accomplish, versus doing a live usability test. You can have that immediate feedback and understand what they're doing. But then also, if you do 5, 10, 15 people do the same usability test and you've given them all the exact same prompts, now you have quantitative data that you can compare. It's really amazing.
But it's probably less expensive too.
It's way less expensive.
Are you recording just their screen, or are you recording their face?
Just their screen.
Oh, okay. Because I'd be like, because my face would be like, and my voice would be like, where the fuck is that?
So that is qualitative data, right? Because that's your perception of it, and you're assigning meaning to it, versus, and that's the big difference between qualitative and quantitative data. The quantitative data has its meaning innately in what it is. Qualitative data, you're assigning that meaning to it. And they're both really useful. And it's really hard to, some people are, really good at quantitative and they can't think outside of the box of numbers. And other people are very qualitative, and you ask them to build a pivot table and a spreadsheet, and they're like, please don't make me. Let's just draw something with sticky notes instead, right? But, like at WordCamps and stuff, whenever I meet these plugin developers and they got this really great idea, and they built this plugin because it solves this very specific problem that they had. So surely other people have this problem. And so they've built this plugin, and now they want everyone to use the plugin. But the thing is you built it based on how you would solve your problem. Even though we all want that same problem solved, that doesn't necessarily mean we would all go about it the same way. So while your plugin might seem very intuitive, to somebody else it might not. It might be a little clunky, and you're blind to that because to you it just makes perfect sense. And so I would really strongly encourage usability testing for those types of things. And the other really great thing about usability, sorry, I'll stop with my word vomit.
No. I mean, you're reminding me of when I first started being on the show with Jason and writing about plugins back in 2015. Because I just like, Jason's like, you're a marketer. I do WordPress. Let's just have a show. I'm like, I don't know anything about WordPress. He goes, that's why I want you on it. And WordImpress, which is now impress.org, was like, we want you to install plugins and then write about it. I'm like, I think you got the wrong person. And I remember the biggest problem for me was when a plugin had an upgrade or was premium only, and you're in your dashboard where the plugins are, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, where is it? And I remember distinctly emailing Adam with Poo Plugins saying, where's the plugin? I bought it. I put the license code in it. I didn't know I had to download a whole nother thing. And not only that, I was a secretary. I'm used to zip files.
Just kind of plug and play. It's got everything.
No, but zip
Right.
files are supposed to expand. They're supposed to, and then you use the files inside there. No, in WordPress, you upload the zip file. I was amazingly frustrated by that. And a lot of us who build plugins work on the freemium model because we want that marketing love from being on WordPress.org. But then when people buy the premium plugin, it doesn't include the free part. That was always a thing with me that I would talk with the guys at Give. I'm like, well, if they buy the bundle, is that one giant zip file and then they have core and everything in it, and all they have to do is go like that? No, they have to download it from .org, and then they get a bunch of different files with a bunch of different license keys that all have to be installed separately. And I was like, we're marketing to church secretaries. They're not going to be able to do that.
Well, and that's a really good thing too, that I was, understanding who your audience is. If you're following a freemium model and you're in the .org, you have to understand that the people who are consuming your product, you oftentimes will not have the same skill set that you do to do these things. Again, why usability testing is important. You don't have to, if we wanted to run a usability test, we don't have to get other technical, or I need a marketer, you don't have to go get your grandma, get your cousin, get people who have absolutely no idea or have no technical proficiency, and let them do your usability tests. It costs nothing. It's super, and they're, them, so they're more likely to, open up and really talk to you. And it'll help you solve so many problems proactively, because they'll help you fill those blind spots. Because like you're saying, Bridget, they just assumed that that's how everyone knew how to work, because that's how plugins work. Right. But again, that's why UX is so important, is because we're not designing things for ourselves. We're designing things to solve problems for other people. And if we don't understand who those other people are, if we don't understand what their pain points are, if we don't understand how they're going to use it and what the various use cases might be, then it doesn't matter how great of a problem solver your product or solution is. It's not going to solve problems for anybody, and it's likely going to cause you a whole bunch of new problems, right? Because you're not thinking about it from this external, consumer driven, empathetic perspective.
Support tickets,
and you have that inherited mechanics of UX, where it's like, I know if I click on this thing that looks like a button, it's going to act like a button. And I hate when people try to build not just a better mousetrap, but a more complicated mousetrap. And you end up with this thing where it's like the button has to be clicked, and then you have to move your mouse across it, and then you have to move the mouse down, and then you have to hold down 3 keys. And you're like, this is supposed to be a call to action. Why did you turn this thing into something crazy? Like, turn it into, just build it the way it's supposed to be built. I've seen plenty of those.
Yeah.
It makes me so sad.
There's a few different traps there, because yes, it should be simple. If it looks like a button, it should be a button. But what happens is people start to over design, right? Because now anyone's going to click a button, and we don't want 200 clicks if only one person or two persons going to actually follow through. So maybe if we make the transaction process a little bit more complicated, then only the people that go through it are people who are really interested in what we're offering. So they have a higher propensity to buy. And so by adding these extra steps, we're filtering out all the people we don't want. But again, that's based on assumptions that your user is willing to go through the extra steps. And so, or if it's
a terrible way to qualify a lead.
Yeah.
Frustrate the customer.
It's almost like if they had a CAPTCHA and the CAPTCHA said, what kind of roof is this?
It's a BUR, damn it.
You can't answer this question. We don't want you as our customer anyway.
How is WordPress spelt? Is it all lowercase? Is it all uppercase? Or do we camel case it?
I was at a WordCamp in Phoenix, and they had like this trivia game, and one of the questions was like, which is correct? And it was WordPress spelled in like all the different ways. And it was like only like less than 50%. I think I remember it being like 46% of people got it right. And I'm like, you guys, what the heck is wrong here? This is like a brand champion community advocacy space, and we don't know how to do it right here. If we can't get it right here, what makes you think you're going to get it right outside of this community? It was just like in my mind. But yeah, so people, you know, I think assumptions are the number one, you know, culprit when it comes to bad UX. And the way you beat assumptions is through research. And research doesn't have to be this big, scary thing. Most of us are doing research every day. If your observations are research, asking questions are research. Surveys are super simple to put together. Most of the time, there's there's a way to do it right, to get the right, because sometimes people fall into a trap. They're like, I want to learn about this. So I build a survey and I get all these answers, but I didn't learn this. I learned these other things. It's like, oh, well, did your answers lead to this? Or, you know, so there's still some thought to go into surveys, but it's not, people think, especially in small businesses and startups and solopreneurs, that market research is this luxury division of business development that they don't get until they grow to that larger enterprise level. And it just couldn't be farther from the truth. You're not ever going to get to that large or enterprise level if you're not doing research at the front end of it.
Can I tell you about something that I would have loved?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is what I would have loved. I told Bridget I'm going to build an ad. So here's an ad about an ad. So if you're in this space and you're wanting to attract customers and be able to tell people about the products and services that you're doing, your ad could have been down here. And all you have to do is go to our website over at WPwatercooler.com/sponsor. And when I say it down here, it's at the bottom of the screen if you're watching this video. But if you're listening to this video, I do something even more than that. I actually make the entire ad show up on the screen if you're listening to us as a podcast. And there's a little button that you can click on and everything to get you to the spot to be able to do it. We also include this stuff in our show notes. So if you go to our website or WPwatercooler.com, you could have scrolled down and looked at the show notes for each of the shows that we have, and you would be able to see that there's actually a button there that you can click on, or a link that you can click on for the ad. So we do these types of ads just to fund us and to fund the project that we're doing here, but also it helps it so that your products and services get put out into the wild here, and people are able to look at it and see it, and we talk about our experiences with it. So if you have a product like that you want to have us advertise, we'd be more than happy to advertise it for you. And our rates are great, and feel free to go take a look at all the information that you want to kind of figure out if this is something for you over at WPwatercooler.com/sponsor.
Hashtag missed opportunity.
Right?
Like we have all these solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. If you are the product and you just put yourself out there, you be your own brand and promote yourself. That's something that I never understood, why more people don't buy advertising dollars to be like, check me out, I exist.
This is a good time to do it too.
Especially now when all these WordCamps, like the WordCamps are being canceled. So people could have spent $5,000 on a booth.
Right.
Or how many ad spots could you get that will actually...
There's so many podcasts, WordPress podcasts that you could get out.
So many. I mean, the Matt Report had his podcast thing out, and before I even could retweet it, he already had them filled up. Like, it's a really good way to be to elevate your brand awareness. And speaking of market research, Michelle, this is why I love Twitter so much. Because everybody tells you what they think, and they're constantly. And when the support people don't respond fast enough, they all go to Twitter, and so they're having trouble with this, and they're having trouble with that, and they don't like this, and they don't like that. They tell you everything about themselves. Like Twitter is those little kids playing with the toys. If you listen You know everything about these people. You know who is bummed that Bernie Sanders dropped out and who is happy that Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race and who is wearing a mask and who changed their profile picture and who has a kid with a chronic illness. We know everything. We know when your dog dies. We know when you have bad dreams. I started tweeting out my bad dreams. Like in this episode, today I just did, in this episode of Bridget's Crazy Dreams or whatever, you know, like but like that could be an opportunity too, because if you hear that customer saying blah 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 blah, wouldn't that be a good person to reach out to, Michelle, to invite for that Zoom call?
Oh, absolutely. That's it. Yeah. Anytime you can find someone where they're already kind of elevated or heated up towards something, you know, that's a great time to poke the bear. And people, I'm not a pot stirrer by nature. I'm not one of these, like, I'm not, you know, a drama chaser or anything like that. But when it comes to getting research or to getting insight, people are more likely to vent when they're upset than when they're happy. And that's when because if you ask someone who's in a good mood, like, oh, what did you think of this? Like, oh, it was okay. I didn't really like it too much. And then that's really all they're going to say. But if you ask them when they're mad, even if they're mad about something else and they're already on it, just point them in this direction. They're going to give you so much more because they just need to get it out of them. And that's why recording is really important, because you're not going to hear it all at once. But yeah, if you get somebody, you know, that's all riled up about something and you can redirect them to giving you some clean insight, then it's a good way to do it. And Twitter is absolutely, you know, great fun hunting lands, I guess would be to find that kind of stuff. I almost said hunting farm, but I don't think you hunt on farms.
I mean, maybe, I guess if you
hunt,
it's more like a workflow for hunting.
Yeah. But
so yeah. could we talk a little bit about UX in email?
Oh, please. I want to hear this.
I've had so many different requests at my work. I work at a church and I do all of our management of our website stuff and all of that. And most of the time I just kind of build something and I go, okay, here's the template that I built. Feel free to go do what you want with it. And really, it's like, do what you want with it. And I'll come back like 6 months later and I'm like, whoa, like, but everything's changed in here. What's going on? And I've seen where, like, you know, they'll put a photo as the button to click on for the call to action, but they don't indicate that that's a call to action. And email's a tricky beast because it's not always the same in everybody's inbox. It's not always the same in any of that stuff. What type of UX stuff have you discussed regarding email to your clients? And what are some of like the basic things that people should be looking at?
So for me, when it comes to email marketing, the number one rule is simple. You should have one, and the only exception of this is newsletters, but newsletters are informative and they usually don't come with a lot of call to action. But if you have a goal for a call to action, then that should basically be the only thing in your email. You don't want to story tell and then have a call to action and then, oh, by the way, do this too. And hey, can't you tweet us out? And if you haven't liked our page yet, do that too. Because they're only going to choose one thing. And so the more call to actions and the more different themes or modules or whatever you stack up inside of an email, you're actively diluting your conversion rate of getting any of that done. And so simple is best. Buttons need to be the call to action on the button. You can get cute with, if you don't want to just say like, click here to learn more. Like, I get it. We don't want to say it. We get tired of the same thing over and over and over again, especially as designers. And so we have this like natural itch to spice it up and to, you know, do something cute and creative and try to go outside of the box a little bit. But you have to reel yourself back in because you're doing that because of your need, because you are burnt out creating these emails, not because you've had any type of feedback or insight or anything else that's coming back. So you have to try to fight those urges and only make changes if the data tells you to make a change. Otherwise, keep it very, very simple. blue and orange are the most clickable colored buttons out there pretty consistently, even on websites, email, social, kind of across the board. Blue and orange are your button colors that are most clicked on. But the text just has to be, simple. And if it makes sense to you, especially like I worked with a brand that liked to use a lot of puns. And so like the call to actions were sometimes puns. And if you get it, then it was funny and clever and like, okay, but not everybody's into puns, unless your brand is into puns because your audience is into puns, then, you might want to like have someone else who's not you. Again, it doesn't always have to be some expert to review your content. I think that's another trap we all fall into is that, oh, I don't have a marketing expert to review what I'm doing, my email before I send it out. Your little brother who doesn't know anything about anything can review your email and tell you if your button makes sense because he's probably more like your user that's reading the email than the marketing expert who's going to come take a look at it. So keep it simple. Don't be afraid to ask for an additional set of eyes outside of the scope of your expertise, and just keep it clean.
And email's a good place to do A/B testing because you're not having to build a whole entirely different website for that test. You could be like, okay, so we're using black buttons today. Let's see what happens. Okay, but this one, we're going to do an orange button. And then you're going to, that based on what you're saying, maybe that orange button is probably going to get more clicks than the black button. Right. What about if you have a bunch of options on that email that you want them to go through and do? Is it getting them out of that email and getting them to a website is what's going to help you the most? Or how do you transition that?
Well, that's where segmentation really comes into play. Who do you want to, because a lot of brands have, lots of moving parts, lots of different products that are suited for different people. And so you want to identify the audience on their behalf. So are you a marketing expert that wants to know X? Click here. Are you a design buff that's having trouble with this? Click here. And so if you do have a multi-audience channel, or you do have a lots of multiple call to actions that you need to take, don't assume that they're going to be able to identify themselves in what your options are. Even with really great storytelling, where they resonate with it and they get it, they still might not understand that button is for them. And so you have to spell it out. And it's not going to, and some people feel like, well, I don't want to be condescending to my audience, or I don't want to talk to them like they're dumb. But you aren't. They're going to appreciate it because anytime you can do the thinking for them and just spoon feed them along, then you're guiding them through. And that's what good UX is you guide them through the process. And so don't be afraid to spell it out for your audience. If you're this person, I want you to click this button for this reason. It is okay to be that direct. Because it helps them filter out the noise. They don't have to make as many decisions. So now you're not fighting, decision-making fatigue and things like that. And you're more likely to get the right audience to where you want them to be. So just segment your audience and think about which users need to go here, which users need to go there. And if you have a user that you want to do all three things, then tell them this is step 1, step 2, step 3, and build them and show them what that path is. Set the expectation, remove any additional thinking on their part, and just kind of spoon feed it to them. And don't be afraid that you're not going to offend or come across as condescending or belittling or anything like that. It'll be appreciated more often than not.
That's cool. Yeah. Options sometimes kill everything, right?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like we need to have you on for a couple other topics. One of them is surveys. Because the thing is, like, I always ask people, well, what do you do? Because everybody wants to use hashtags on Facebook. And then I'll ask them, how many of you use hashtags on Facebook? I did this at WordCamp LA, my beginner class, and 90% raised their hand.
So like I copy the copy from Instagram and then I put it into Facebook.
And then I asked them, how many of you click on hashtags on Facebook? One person out of 75 people, one person. So the thing is that that empathy of trying to put yourself into those shoes is really important. And like to me, I'm a lot of times I will fill out surveys because I'm a marketer and I get that person. But if it keeps going on and on and on, I'm out. I go, I don't have time for this crap. Yeah, I liked your product. I'm out. Like I just, I just can't deal with this right now. It's too much. But you're right, Michelle. When it's easy, then it's so much. The whole process is completely different because you're just like, I want to help you, and you kind of gave me that hospitality to make it easy for me to help you instead of 1 to 10 on 20 things per page and 5 pages of that.
Yeah.
Help me help you. So the better you understand who you're talking to, the better you know how to spoon feed them the experience.
Wow. Yeah, that was an amazing. Wow. Definitely going to have you on again, but now is tool or tip of the week. This week's tool or tip of the week is brought to you by Fat Dog Creatives. If you're a service-based business serious about growth, Rhonda Nygaard is your rebranding and web design thinker, a strategic design specialist. Check out her website at fatdogcreatives.com. So my tool or tip of the week is this book. The link's in the chat. Jason's called Meditations of John Muir, Nature's Temple. I got it when I was at the Sequoia National Forest back in October, and I was like, oh, it's $12 and it's like, I don't know, less than 150 pages. That's always good for me. As somebody who's constantly writing marketing copy, it gets a little overwhelming to only be reading marketing copy. I'm on the internet reading marketing copy, to tweet out to other people, to read marketing copy. And I feel like I'm trapped in an infomercial. So like, I'll give you an example. They're very short. I like to read this one a day while I'm eating my oatmeal or Greek yogurt or something. But his writing is so ridiculous. Like, okay, read this for yourself, but don't ever put this on a website. This is not the way you write for the internet. The water owls in his rocky home amid foaming waters. How romantic and beautiful is the life of this brave little singer on the wild mountain streams, building his round, bossy nest of moss by the side of a rapid or fall, where it is sprinkled and kept fresh and green by the spray. No wonder he sings well, since the air about him is music. Every breath he draws is part of a song, and he gets his first music lessons before he's born. For the eggs vibrate in time with the tones of the waterfalls. Bird and stream are inseparable, songful and wild, gentle and strong. The bird ever in danger in the midst of the stream's mad whirlpools, yet seemingly immortal. And so I might go on, writing words, 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 but to what purpose? Go see him and love him, and through him, as through a window, look into nature's warm heart. Like,
Aww.
I love that, right? Like, you're reading something and it makes you go, whoa, yeah. And my favorite part as a marketer, I could go on running words, words, more words, but to what purpose? Which completely ties into today's subject. Like, we're writing for a goal.
Right.
So if you're just going on and on and on and on in your web copy or your blog posts, just stop, drop, and roll. Edit that. That's the lesson from John Muir.
Okay. I have two things I want to say to that. So first of all, I agree with you. I'm immersed in marketing all of the time, and so I am not one of those I have all of these like CEO books that you're supposed to read. Like all of the books that I read are like self-work, internal work, interpersonal relationships, because that is what me being better understanding myself. I can remove my biases from the things that I'm working on, and so I kind of take that whole other direction. And the other thing is, I was at a concert one time and someone handed me a business card and it said, "Stop talking." And on the other side, it said, "You're welcome." And I was just like, oh, yes, it's so brilliant. Such a great concept. Just shut up, y'all. Look around, pay attention, and respond. Like, ugh. So,
do you have a tool or tip for us, Michelle?
Yes. So my tool that I love that I wanted to talk about today was Zapier. It is a automated connector to all things. So I'm not very technologically proficient. I can build a WordPress site and I can, go through and edit some HTML if I need to. But I'm not going to be able to connect an API to another API to make my website do what I want it to do. So Zapier is fantastic. Their tagline is Zapier makes you happier. They connect with everything social. But what I want to talk about is that the external use of Zapier is really obvious, but the internal use of Zapier is less obvious, but incredibly powerful. We can automate our own to-do lists and follow up things using Zapier. So if an action is taken on your website and you need to follow up later, you don't need to set up a Zap to send an email to that person. You need to set up a Zap to remind you that you have an action that you need to take internally. And so especially when it comes to UX and designing these seamless processes, paying attention is really critical. And when there's a lot of variables at play, things fall through the cracks. So using a tool like Zapier to automate your internal processes is actually a really great way to keep it all cohesive.
Wow.
Yeah, Zapier is awesome. We use it at work for all sorts of stuff, being able to kind of push and pull things and do all the things that needs to make everything talk to each other. And yeah, it especially if you're playing around with it and you get stuck, there are plenty of videos on YouTube explaining like, here's how to make these two things talk to each other. And most of the time, even if you do a Google search for like, how do I make these two things talk to each other? They're going to say, use Zapier to do it. Well, so you might as well.
And the Zapier team is really great. They have wonderful customer service. So if you're trying to use Zapier and you get caught up, their support staff is fantastic as well.
And I like that they did Zapier makes you happier, because you can't say Zapier makes you happier.
Okay, that's the only reason why I know how to pronunciate it.
Me too. Because I was like, is it Zapier? Is it Zapier? And it's like, Zapier makes you happier. And that's how you remember it.
Before
That's
people
awesome.
did that, I called it Zapier because that's what it looks like according to English.
Right. But then you don't call them Zapes. They're Zaps.
Well, that's the gift shift thing. What's your tool, Jason?
What's my tool? So I've been having to deal a lot with time zones lately. And time zones are such a pain in the butt, especially when you're doing a show like this, where you have no idea where the person's at. You finally find out where they're at, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night for you. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry we're bringing you in here to do this. But my tour tip of the week this week is to use a tool called calzones. And it's not a really great pizza type product. It's not. So what calzones is, and I'm going to show you real quick here, is it's an app that you can run on your mobile device. It also works as a watch app. So if you have an Apple Watch or something like that, you can do that as well. And what it does is it will show you what your local time is, which is at the very top. So mine says it's 9:54, and then it shows you all the other time zones that you care about. So you can go and add in additional time zones if you want. Go in here and say, I want to configure my time zones, put on all the time zones that you interact with. And then when you're done, you go out here and you can see what those times are for that particular time. What I like about it is I can quickly figure out. I have a son who's in the Marine Corps, and so I need him to be able to, get a hold of me and me be able to get a hold of him. And I don't want to hit him up at the wrong time. And so it's like the easiest way to do it is to just go load this up real quick and go, oh, it's 2 a.m. He's not even going to be awake. Maybe he's doing Firewatch. Maybe he will be awake. All right. Well, let's see. So, that's a great tool to kind of use to do that. So if you're looking for something that's going to help you out with doing that type of thing, you can do it using that. If you wanted to schedule a particular meeting or something, if you tap on one of those, you can actually go and fill out all the meeting information, and then it'll make sure that you're going to be awake and those people are going to be awake, and then kind of work it out from there. Very so cool. Calzones, it's $5 in the App Store, and it's made by some really great people that have used or that have built other really sweet apps. If you've ever used Pedometer Plus or Sleep Plus or Workouts Plus, there's a bunch of pluses that he does. But there's his coding style and the way that he builds his interfaces and stuff are really nice. So yeah, go take a look at that. That's calzones.
I wonder how much user research he does in developing which products and how to get such great intuitive platforms.
Yeah, because the stuff that he builds is all of these. I mean, all the pluses. I use the Pedometer Plus and Workout Plus quite a bit. But yeah, he's done some really cool things. So feel free to go take a look at that. Like I said, it's $4.99. If you're the kind of person that likes to look at these things inside like the navigation or in the notification view or anything like that, you can kind of just go through and figure out what those times are and get it all worked out.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's fun.
I tend to Google things like, what time is it in Orange County right now?
Yeah, I mean, because I have clients all over the world, I have their time zones in my world clock, just Apple. Because, Kuala Lumpur, I'm like, oh, it's already tomorrow. Well, it doesn't really matter if I do it right now. I might as well just sleep.
Right.
Sorry,
I
Eric.
work made in Poland, and she's always a day ahead of me. And so I was just like, oh, she's not going to wake up for 10 more hours. Like, I can do this in a little bit.
Especially with the differences in who adopts and if they adopt daylight savings time and when.
Oh yeah, that's
really the worst. I mean, I feel like the UN is really missing their call. I mean, I know that they like to talk about child labor and stuff, but what I would like them to do is establish a universal worldwide daylight savings time and building codes.
Building codes.
Well, I mean, how many earthquakes do you need in Haiti before we figure this out? The best building codes are in Japan and Los Angeles, and I wonder why. Because we have earthquakes. So let's learn and iterate and help them with their infrastructure so that so many people don't die in Lima, Peru when they have an earthquake, which they always have earthquakes because they have mountains. And wherever there's mountains, there's 2 tectonic plates going like this all the time. And that's the kind of conflict we really need to be dealing with. Anyway, that's
user testing. I mean, we've got the data.
We have the data.
That button kept looking like images and no one knew how to click on it.
I mean, the Netherlands did an amazing job with their technology to be below sea level. We need to take that and then apply it to the Mississippi Delta. So clearly the lock system doesn't work there. So as well. So let's learn from the Dutch.
Bridget wants to start another podcast.
I mean, to me, I think that it's easier to deal with practical things than emotional things. But anyway, I say it as a joke, but I really think that it's more practical. Then more people have work too. So I don't know, whatever. So we have 2 more minutes. Michelle, can you give us one more pearl of wisdom on how people can find you? Are you taking on client work?
So I have a wait list right now.
Dang.
Because I am actually, so I left Pressable and I'm looking for a full-time position, and I've got some really great prospects lined up, and hopefully we'll be making an announcement in April. But I am taking client work just to kind of fill the gaps, but I'm not trying to overwhelm myself. Plus we're in this middle of this big move and transition, and I've learned the hard way that saying yes to every project that comes across your plate, you end up getting projects that you don't want to do, so they take way longer to do them, or you can't get along with the client and it just creates friction, and I don't got time for none of that. So So right now, I'm being very selective, which is good because all the projects I'm working on right now are super fun. But I'm on LinkedIn for Michelle Keefer, and then also on Twitter at MK Does Marketing, but it's MKTG, so MKDOES, MKTG. Again, one of those things that to me seems very intuitive. MK Does Marketing, like that's the acronym, like that's how you abbreviate marketing. But other people are like, what does this mean? Like, what does your Twitter mean? It's like, what? So you never know whether it's your Twitter handle or what it's going to be. You can't assume that your user is going to understand how to find you. But yeah, I would love to do more of these. This has been fun. I really enjoy sharing my knowledge and teaching people and talking to people and helping people understand concepts. So I'm happy to do this again. Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, I think you win the prize for having the most amount of degrees.
Yes.
Yeah, no joke. Jeez, I was very intimidated when I clicked the button and went like, oh, goodness gracious. I just followed her on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I was like, oh.
No, I think we know somebody with 2 master's degrees, but not this many.
Yes. Well, my husband wants to go back to school, and so I'm on a forced break. But I do plan on going back and completing a doctorate in consumer behavior eventually. That's coming as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a big nerd.
Awesome. So
we need more people like you, Michelle, who take the theory and practice and put them in a good marriage.
I'm going to wrap up real quick here. I want to let you know, go over to our website over at WPwatercooler.com/WPblab to find more information about this show and how you can get on the show and how you can sponsor the show. You can also go over to WPwatercooler.com, which is going to be starting in just a few minutes. Well, actually about an hour. So feel free to go take a look at that too. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.